Solving a quadratic equation using the square root property. All right, so going back to quadratic equations, we talked about what makes a quadratic equation a quadratic equation is that the highest power to that equation is 2. Okay, so we want to make sure that as we solve, now we talked about solving a quadratic equation by factoring. So next we're going to look at solving a quadratic equation using the square root property. So we talked about in the last lecture about what would negate a square root or a cube root or fourth root. That's by raising that particular question by the index according to the index. Now for this example that we're going to be looking at the square root property, you're going to be having a power. It could be a power of 3, it can be a power of 2. Well, here for this example, it's going to be the square root property, the power of 2. And with the square root property, it's saying that if you have a question where it's raised to a power, you have a solution, then you're going to end up with 2 answers, 2 solutions. So I want you to think about this before we move on. If, not if, here's a statement here. I want you to fill in the blank. What could we put in this box that when we square it, it would give us 25? We can put in a positive 5 because positive 5 squared gives us 25. And we can also put in negative 5 because the quantity of negative 5 squared gives us 25. So we have here if x squared is equal to c, then x is equal to the square root of c or x is equal to negative square root of c. So to negate a power of 2, to get rid of this exponent of 2, we would have to take the square root. Okay, so here are the instructions. How to solve an equation that has a square term using the square root property. Number 1, isolate the expression containing the square term. Number 2, use the square root property. 3, isolate the variable if necessary, meaning solve for that variable, and then check your solutions. So let's look at an example. We have here x squared is equal to 144. And I want us to, so our goal is to solve for x. But right now, our x is raised to the second power. So to negate a power of 2, we have to raise both sides by the square root of 2, or take the square root of 2, or using the square root property. So we're going to take the square root to both sides. But as we take the square root of both sides, you're going to have 2 solutions. You're going to have a positive solution and you're going to have a negative solution. Okay, so you can use this symbol here, plus and a minus that's together, where the minus sign is right under the plus, where, well, it's noted as plus or minus. This is how we would say it. That is a symbol. So as we take the square root of both sides, let's look at this one. The exponent of 2 and the square root cancels out, and we have x is equal to, because we have 2 solutions, we're going to say plus or minus, and then tell me what's the square root of 144. That is 12. Now, if you want to, you can put your solution as plus 12, or you can put it as minus 12. But you do have this symbol that we can use that represents both of these solutions here, plus or minus. Let's look at the next example. X squared is equal to 175. We want to solve for x. To do so, we're going to take the square root to both sides. On the left-hand side, the square root and the exponent of 2 cancels out. We have x is equal to plus or minus. Well, the square root of 175. 175 is not a perfect square, so we have to go back to what we know about radicals and how we simplify radicals. So this will be a good refresher. Let's break down 175. What times what gives us 175? 5 and 35. And then break 5 is prime. Let's break down 35. We have 5 and 7. Therefore, the prime factors for 175, we have 5, 5, and 7. You have a pair of 5s that we can circle. That means we're going to bring that 5 out. 7 would stay because it's not pairing with anything. Therefore, our solution is x is equal to plus or minus 5 square root of 7. Now, in the math program that we're using, that software we're using online, there is a plus or minus symbol in its toolbar. So you just have to click into the box, and then at the bottom of our program, you'll see a plus or minus symbol that's there.